is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 244. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at PegasusPodcast@ksn@gmail.com. Christian, how's it going? How are you feeling about one more football game for the season?
Feeling great. Very excited to watch a game that does not matter in any capacity. Just for our listeners, it's a little dimmer in my room than usual. That's because don't ever say we're not committed to this podcast. My eyes are currently dilated, and we're doing the podcast anyway because I went to the doctor today. I went to an ophthalmologist, which I've never been to before because I had a little I don't know if I've ever mentioned on the podcast before how I have raging health anxiety, but a new spot formed on my eye. So I was like, that's got to get checked out now. And I went in and I don't know if anyone's listening has ever had this happen to them. I got surprise dilated. They didn't tell me. Not only did they not tell me in advance they were going to dilate my eyes, like he didn't tell me he was doing it when he did it. I get in there and he starts looking at my eyes. And after a few minutes, he's like, look up for me really quickly. And I look up and then there's like droplets going into my eyes. I'm like, what's happening here? And then he looks at my eyes for like 10 more minutes. And he's like, yeah, no, you're good. Nothing to worry about. By the way, I dilated your eyes. So just, don't look in the sun. Don't go outside without sunglasses. And I was like, I don't have sunglasses. And they were like, man, tough.
They didn't give you the little like plastic ones that are horrible?
No. And other people in my life I've told about this have pointed out to me that you typically have to like sign something before you get your eyes dilated. And that just did not happen. I walked in and they were like, here you go. So it's been a day. I can't really see Bailey because I have the brightness turned down all the way on my computer.
You don't
it's
need
a little
to see me.
Dimmer in my room than usual, so apologies for that. But we are here, eyes normal and or dilated. We will always be doing this podcast, so here we are.
With respect to your situation here, that's the second worst thing that's happened today because RJ Harvey was snubbed from the Doak Walker Award finalists list. And I'm not happy about it. I also didn't tell you that we were going to start the podcast with that, but I thought it was a good transition.
We're gonna have to change that to me real quick here.
That to me was worse than your eye situation. Although your eye situation is also bad.
What do the Doak Walker voters and me have in common?
Can't see.
Both blind.
No, we can talk about the rest of that later. We'll get to that later on.
It is absolutely ridiculous, and especially, and this isn't a situation like last year. I was very frustrated with the Big 12 for leaving him off of the honor roll, but like I could see like there were other really good running backs, and I was like, I understand how they got here. I just don't agree with it. There are one or two guys that got ahead of RJ on this list that just actually patently does not make sense, and it's just straight up you don't have eyes, and that is so infuriating. But what can you do?
Yeah, it sucks. But yeah, maybe we'll get back around to that in a little bit. We're going to start kind of. I don't remember if we said it on the podcast on Saturday or not. What we had kind of had this idea for. I know we referenced this point, and we're kind of diving deeper into it today, and it's more so kind of I've titled it "The Truth About Recruiting Under Gus Malzahn," which sounds very, I don't know, it sounds more serious than it is.
That should be the name of the video on YouTube, and it'll get like 4,000 views with truth in all caps. The truth about Gus Malzahn.
You got to do one of those thumbnails that's like over the top.
It's just the photo of him yelling at Risk, but you crop out Risk, so it looks like Gus is yelling at us because we're about to reveal the information.
That's really good. Yeah, I mean, you pointed it out on Saturday about how there were, I don't remember if it was more or the same, or just kind of insane how many contributors on this team or the guys that were on the field on Saturday night, 4 years after Josh Heupel left, there's still, Heupel recruits outnumbering Malzahn recruits who are actually contributing to this. I don't know where you want to start, but that's kind of the gist of what we're getting at here.
Yeah, and I want to say I don't want to paint myself as a genius or anything, even though I kind of am. But there was no pre-planning for that. That just kind of occurred to me in real time on the podcast, and then I got a little anxious after we posted the podcast because I was like, God, I hope I wasn't out of turn by saying that. So then you and I started diving into PFF numbers over the last few days. Was not out of turn. Actually, very accurate. That somehow deep in the Gus era, and honestly, the point, and this is what we're going to dive into, is it wasn't just more Heupel high school recruits contributing than Gus high school recruits. It's that. How is it that the whole point of this Gus era was the big difference, the big changes? They're going to focus on high school. UCF's going to recruit the high school ranks like never before, which they have. And we're somehow in a situation where there are more guys that the Heupel staff recruited to UCF out of high school that are contributing at a high level right now than guys Gus has brought in year 4.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I guess that, and it's just when you kind of look at the top contributors by year, it's so much of it's the transfer portal. And I think that happens elsewhere. We look at two other examples that we'll get into around the Big 12, but it really is just kind of shocking to say, like, yeah, Gus is recruiting better than anyone ever has at UCF, and their rankings are all great. And then when it comes to like actually playing these guys or actually seeing these guys on the field and contributing, it hasn't happened yet. And I don't feel like we're jumping the shark here because, I mean, he's been here for 4 years. Like this is year 4 for him. It's not like, he's going to keep relying. And I guess this would probably be the last year that he'll have this many Heupel guys. And at that point, it's either going to be his own recruits or he's just going to flood them with transfers again. But
the best thing I can hope for is that this time next year we talk about all the Malzahn era high school recruits that the new coaching staff has uncovered on the roster who should have been playing this whole time. But one can hope and dream.
Yeah. So do you want to go year by year on this, or how do you want to do this?
Why don't we just go year by year and we can talk about the trend, because I think it's a transfer trend as much as it's a Heupel trend. And I was impressed and surprised by these numbers when you sent these my way. So why don't we take a look at it?
There wasn't a ton to be surprised about, obviously, with year 1, 2021. It was, Gus's first year. He had just gotten here. So I guess I should explain, rewind a second. I looked at the top 5 highest graded players on offense and defense per Pro Football Focus. Minimum 100 snaps. Because when you look at it, there was I think 2021 or 2022. Yeah, it must have been 21. Quadri Jones was the 3rd highest graded player on offense, even though I think he had 12 snaps, something like that. These are the 5 highest rated offensive players who played a minimum of 100 snaps that year. Johnny Richardson, Heupel recruit. Ryan O'Keefe, a Heupel recruit. Dylan Gabriel, a Heupel recruit. Isaiah Bowser, a transfer. And Matt Lee, a Heupel recruit. So,
well, let me just say right off the bat that that was such a bad sign that in year 1, when Gus had not yet had a high school recruiting class, he wasn't playing high school recruits. How dare he? There's less to talk about in year 1 because it was also a weird situation where Heupel topped off the recruiting class and then left. So that's so funny how much things have changed and how much my interest in the portal has changed in that time since. Because if I was looking at that, if you showed me that right after the 2021 season, I'd say, dang, what a find was Bowser out of the portal. Love this staff and what they're doing to uncover someone like that. And things are a little different now, but
looking back in hindsight, 2021 was not one that I even needed to include in this, but I'll just skip over the defense. All the 5 highest graded defensive players were all Heupel guys. No transfers in that. But 2022 is where we start to see a little bit. I mean, we had that year of Malzahn's recruiting taking a leap.
Yes. This was the class of Tommy Castellanos, Nakai Martinez, Jordan McDonald, all those guys, the Henderson twins, I believe, in that class. And it was whoa, UCF is going to another level here.
Yeah. So it's the unique one here. So we'll start on offense where it's Matt Lee, who is a Heupel guy, then 3 transfers in RJ Harvey, John Rice Plumlee, and Ryan Swoboda, and then another Heupel guy in Johnny Richardson. And then on defense, the highest graded player was actually Matthew Alexander, who came in under Gus.
Very surprising.
And then it was transfers in Jarvis Ware, Jason Johnson, and then 2 Heupel guys, Tremont Morris, Brash, and Corey Thornton.
Really quickly, don't think Matthew Alexander came in under Gus.
He came in 2022, didn't he?
No, I don't think so. I'm going to check really quickly. I think that's a Heupel guy.
Is he really? Because I feel
checking right now.
It said his first year at UCF was 2022.
Yeah, no, he was a Heupel recruit.
Was he? What year was he?
He was. He committed in July of 2020. He signed in class of 2021.
Oh, okay. Well, it said he's been here since 2022, which is weird. I guess maybe that's just when he started playing.
Yeah.
So,
well, sorry, Gus, you lost one.
Wrongly gave Gus credit there. So that's 3 Heupel guys and 2 transfers on defense. So still, in his second season, there were not any top contributors who were his own guys. Which, again, to be fair, that's his true freshman class.
You would expect, I think we all expected 2023 to be the first year we really saw the Gus recruits take over, because then you would have had new true freshmen coming in. Because the other thing you got to remember, guys, that's different from how UCF is used to operate was when you start recruiting blue chippers and guys like that, the expectation is they play earlier. It's not like when UCF would grab all these lowly rated 3-stars and you try to develop and then something. The idea is some of these guys come in ready-made, and we had seen that, like with John Walker, for example. But so year 2, what you're starting to see in year 2 is what less stood out to me is all the Heupel guys, and more how we're already starting to see that transfer reliance. That it is really heavily on transfers that are contributing at the top of the team.
Yeah, and that continued into 2023. It was the offense top 5 being 4 transfers and Johnny Richardson, who's just been a constant of being a Heupel guy. But it was John Rice Plumlee at the top, which actually surprised me. He was higher graded than RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey, Javon Baker, Johnny Richardson, and Tylen Grable. So that's, again, the first kind of chance. And this was already after he kind of run off Tommy Castellanos. And there was just nothing else, nothing else really coming up that way on offense. And then on defense, where you did see two, and this is where it kind of gets sad because you see 2 wins on defense from Gus, and this year we didn't get to see him because of injury. So on defense, it was a Heupel guy in Corey Thornton, a transfer in Lee Hunter, 2 Gus guys and the Henderson twins, Jakari and Damari, and then Tremont Morris-Brash, a Heupel guy. But that's out of his control, obviously. The Henderson's not being able to play in 2024, and at least
we've had Jakari a little bit. We've had Jakari this year a little bit. Yeah,
but he hasn't. I don't think he's been. I don't know.
He hasn't taken any kind of leap. He's just been out there here and there. This is definitely the first alarm bell one, especially given that Gus is an offensive coach that I don't know if you could have ever convinced me when we had our very excited podcast through those first 2 recruiting classes that we'd get to year 3 of the Gus era and not a single high school recruit would have ranked in the top 5 as far as the best offensive players. That's when you start to see alarm bells.
Yeah, because I kind of look back at, not only are they not in the top 5, but it's you start to look at who they had brought in, who is one that really has panned out, or who's 2 that's really panned out on offense, other than offensive linemen. I think Herb Hand has had a big part in.
But even offensive line, only one of those guys has come from high school. It's been guys they've lined from the portal. It's been Kittler out of high school, but that's it.
Yeah, because it's funny. So 2024, I actually ended up doing top 10 for 2024 because that's the year we're in. And it's presumably when you were going to see that kind of jump. These guys, like you just mentioned, the Hendersons being juniors at this point, I'm just using them as an example. But on offense, it's RJ Harvey at the top, of course, transfer. Yeah. The second highest graded offensive player is Dylan Risk. Probably
who I hate even counting for Gus, since he was buried at 4th string and Gus clearly did not want him ever on the field. But he is a high school recruit under Gus, so he gets Risk.
That blew me away. I obviously knew he was a Gus recruit. It's just so funny that one of his wins has been the guy he had 4th string who he kind of was forced into playing.
Now that we're a little away from the West Virginia game, by the way, not to get us too off topic, I'm surprised. I was not expecting how much of UCF Twitter is out on Risk now after that game. I didn't even think that was a particularly bad game. He had a couple bad moments. How many we saw worse games from John Raspomley every other week in 2022 than I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of curious what UCF fans are looking for from a quarterback at this point. I didn't have insanely high expectations for Risk because he's a redshirt freshman, because this was his 3rd ever start. He hasn't had a disaster game. I thought that game was totally fine, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I was trying to look it up too, because I think I was looking at the game by game stuff, and I think he graded out perfectly fine. He was one of the better players on offense for UCF in that game.
He had the bad fumble, the handoff, the botched handoff, and there was no other moment from him where I was trying to peel my skin off my face in anger. I just went out there, he played,
Yeah. So Risk is number 2, and then the next 5 are transfers: Jacoby Jones, Miles Montgomery, Amari Kite, Kobe Hudson, KJ Jefferson making an appearance at 7. He's the 7th highest ranked graded player. And then it's Paul Rubelt, a Heupel guy, and then Caden Kittler, who we mentioned a second ago as a Gus guy, and then Adrian Medley, who was a Heupel guy. So when you're looking at the top 10 for this year 4 under Gus, the 3rd year of his first recruiting class, and even those recruiting classes after, I wasn't maybe necessarily expecting them to produce stars in year 1 and 2, but it's only 100 snaps for one. But also, it's when you're talking up these transfer classes, and we did it too, obviously, because they're so highly rated. Some of those guys you would have expected to see on the field as freshmen, as sophomores, like the 2023 class. It's just kind of surprising when you look at who is contributing, and it is just transfers and a few leftover Heupel guys. And
when you're looking at a situation where you as a staff have now recruited going into the season 3 full high school classes, 3 full cycles that have all been yours, those 3 classes have in order been the 3 highest ranked classes in the history of the program.
Yep.
And that they have resulted through 3 cycles in 2 offensive starters in the top 10 on the team. One of them being a guy you buried at 4th string at his position and only had to go to him out of absolute necessity. And the other one, Kittler's fine, not a star. That's surprising. That is surprising. And I don't know if that's an indictment on evaluation, if it's an indictment on development, but it's definitely an indictment on something. Because when you look at it in the lens of 3 highest ranked classes in program history, and it's resulted in almost nothing at the top of the roster on offense, is when you have an offensive head coach, that's something.
That's the point that actually I'm glad you made it, because I hadn't even really made that distinction. And obviously we're looking at these numbers and just some of what we're looking at here, but yeah, he's an offensive head coach. Like that point didn't even really occur to me to make that, is saying like, this is a guy who's supposedly an offensive guru, and one, not whether you, like you said, whether it's evaluation or development, hasn't been able to do that. And two, I mean, he's having to give up play calling a million times, and we're not seeing an offense that's putting up, 50, 40, whatever many points a game. It's not like schematically or system wise, he's been that great of an offensive guru. So it's like, what is he doing that is earning him at this point? It's all, and it goes back to what we've said. Like, it's everything that people keep saying about Gus is from the early 2010s.
Yeah.
Which is really sad.
And it's unfortunate. Listen, we all peak at some point. It happens. Some people peak in high school. Some people peak in the 2010s when they have Cam Newton. It just depends on the person. But I think what's so...
I peaked when Tom Brady quarterbacked the team that I cover.
I don't know. I think I peaked with 2017 UCF. I can't think of another time. And it turns out UCF peaked there too. But
yeah.
Do you ever think about how we're never going to see an undefeated UCF season again?
Sometimes.
Because if you're listening and you're like, oh, you're a hater, like, no, there's an expanded playoff now. There'd never be a situation where they would go and, like, if they're undefeated, they would go to the playoff. Let's be real. I don't believe UCF is capable of winning a national championship, probably, I don't know, at any point in the foreseeable future, unless college football dramatically changes. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of funny that you're never going to see that or it's a 0, but, we say, you're never going to see that 0 at the end of UCF's record again. It's kind of funny.
This is maybe a really short-sighted take, but I don't know that it is. I can't even see them going into the playoff undefeated.
Probably not in the Big 12.
I don't think they go undefeated in the Big 12 at any point. Like,
that is probably short-sighted because, like, just college football changes.
Yeah.
Like, who knows where things will be. I mean, God, like 50 years ago, they think about different the sport was. Who knows? But, like, at least in the decade ahead of us, doesn't feel possible. But whatever.
No, I can't. Because, I mean, no Big 12 team really does that. So,
no, it's so funny because, look, Kansas sucked all year and then got to November and was like, let's eliminate everyone from the playoff in our own conference. Like, it's such a flat league,
I think, and that's just, I don't want to get too off topic here, but on that point, I think it was Big Cat from Barstool, like, posted something about, like, he wishes there was a playoff for teams that started bad but got really good. Like, Kansas in there, Florida would be in there, Baylor would be in there, like, just to see all those teams play each other because, like, they're the hottest teams in the country, but they're also like 6-5.
I think it would be funny if they did a 12-team playoff, but the 12th spot was just a one spot that the committee voted on. It was just what team with a under 8-win record, but that's really hot right now, deserves the final spot. You just throw them in this year. But I feel like we will see versions of that in the 12-team era because I also think back to, was it 2016 USC who I started either 1-3 or 0-3 and then just got stupid hot and annihilated the Pac-12 and then went and beat up on Penn State in the Rose Bowl and was clearly one of the best teams in the country, but never came close to the postseason because they were, they had 3 losses. I feel like we will start to see stuff like that in the 12-team era. But let me get really quickly because we got so far away from what I was going to say, but that's just how this podcast rolls is the thing when you talk about high school guys not showing up for offense this year, the ones that really, really stand out to me are the skill talent. Where are the skill talent wins for the staff from high school? I mean, genuinely, where are they? And it's so interesting to me because if you don't follow recruiting super closely, that's kind of like what the state of Florida is known for, is producing crazy speed and crazy skill guys, like insane running backs, insane wide receivers. And I'm very surprised that through 4 years and 3 full high school recruiting classes, it's just just haven't seen them find that at all. And that was honestly and obviously how UCF became a brand and became relevant and became very good initially, was finding those guys out of the state of Florida. That was how they elevated and how they became what they were.
Yeah. And the more we talk about this, and even kind of while I was looking at all of this information, I was trying to figure out how much of this, I mean, we'll get on to the other comparisons we have, but how much of this is Gus and, specifically Gus and this staff, and how much is also the transfer portal era and the way that this staff has addressed the transfer portal era. Because I did trying to think ahead, say next year, say Gus returns, the roster largely stays intact, whatever. like who are you expecting to be, some of the lead running backs, for example? Like it's Miles Montgomery will probably be back.
Montgomery, who's a transfer and not someone who grew out of high school.
Yeah, because they have Stacey Gage on the roster now.
And really quickly, if you've been listening to these first 20 minutes as a listener and getting mad and saying, well, you're naming all these good transfers they got, don't worry. We'll get to why that's bad. We have more stats. Like, stay tuned. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Is like that's why I was trying to look. I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, yeah, it's like at least they are having, and it's also, and some of it's subjective, obviously. It's like these grades aren't everything. They're not gospel. But it is just kind of funny that you're looking at it and it is just all transfers. It's like, yeah, credit to them. That's how they're building the team. But you're also looking at these are the highest graded guys on the team. This is a 4-7 team.
It's also credit to them, but also like it doesn't necessarily mean those were transfer wins. It just means someone has to play.
That's true.
You have to put 11 guys on the field. Like it's not. It's the I don't know if they've necessarily cleaned up in the portal. They've had good portal wins. They've had more portal misses. It's not like this is a team where you say, oh, they've so expertly navigated the portal and mined guys no one was after that they've turned this team. It's like, no, they're actively failing while doing this. And
here's an example of that is in that top 10 on offense for this year is Jacoby Jones is 3rd and KJ Jefferson is 7th. Yes. Those are 2 prime examples right there where it's like, those aren't portal hits really. I mean, Jacoby, if he had played more of the season, maybe could have been.
They turned him into a miss by not playing him until late in the season.
Yeah, so there's a lot to it, but the thing that really is now sticking with me that you said it is that Gus is an offensive coach, and they're really just like the skill talent. We did this a couple weeks ago. You and I don't. This wasn't on the podcast. It was just when I was actually last time I was in Orlando, and we were talking about the guys that they have hit on, and we did that whole list, and we were thinking about like their best. I don't remember what the term was that we kept using for them, but their best hits were on offense. We're all offensive linemen.
Yeah, and which is her hands domain.
Yeah, so that is stunning to me that you kind of look at receiver, you look at running back, and I mean it's I don't know. It's maybe less so with running back because you do have RJ Harvey, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to like criticize the staff for not having other younger running backs behind him because like I mean I don't know they got the transfers and RJ was always going to be the guy. But it's more so at receiver where you are having problems and
you're actively having problems. And think of how much those problems have been covered up by Javon and Kobe coming in as transfers in that first year.
And playing all like they no real big injuries that like will cause them to miss a bunch of time.
And when you talk about the high school wins, most of them have been the ones that Gus was not involved with. It's been Damari Henderson. It's been John Walker. It's been Braden Marshall. Like it's most of the big recruiting hits out of high school have been on defense. It hasn't happened on offense.
And so that's the thing is we'll look now at the defense of the top 10. And I do want to point out, like you said, like the Hendersons, Braden Marshall's not on this list because he's been banged up a little bit. Obviously, John Walker has been out for the whole season. So not to Gus's credit, but to the staff's credit and the guys who landed those players, that the list might look a little different if they were fully healthy. But that being said, the list does not have because I wrongly labeled Matt Alexander a Gus guy. This top 10 list doesn't have a Gus Malzahn era player. It is, I think, 7 transfers. It's the top 4 are all transfers: Mac McWilliams, Lee Hunter, Nigel Kelly, Ricky Barber. And then B.J. Adams and as a Heupel guy, Dalen Dotson, Sheldon Arnold as transfers, Quadric Bullard as a Heupel guy, and then Ektre Alexander a transfer, and Matt Alexander a Heupel guy. So
they credit Walker would be in there if he was not hurt, but you have multiple Heupel guys in the top 10 on defense.
I think Damari would too.
And you literally have is that 0? That's 0.
Yeah,
high school recruits, 0 in the top 10. That's something.
And so. It's given this whole exercise has given me more of a view of like they really have gone all in trying to just build the whole team through transfers. And you can almost chalk that up as one of the big reasons these last 2 years have been the way they have been. And even in terms of perception from the fan base is you built these rosters up as like, oh, these guys are all experienced. This is a roster that can compete. And I think it was more than lip service. I think they truly believed they were going to be Big 12 contenders, and then you go out and you win 4 games, and now we're left looking at this on the week of the Black Friday game instead of oh, do they have a chance to get into the Big 12 title game with a win on Friday?
Yeah.
It's crazy that this is how they built the team, and it does raise some alarm bells in my head that as much as, the ratings have been good from recruiting, high school recruiting in Florida hasn't yielded what we thought it was and what we thought it should.
For a staff that declared they were going to recruit better than ever, did recruit better than ever if you're going by the ratings. And that's part of why I'm skeptical too, because I know that recruiting rankings are far from everything. You know that if you follow college football, but it feels almost mathematically impossible that they just keep missing on full classes, basically. That just doesn't seem, I don't know. It feels like there's something else going on there. And the other thing I do want to be clear about is as we talk about, their reliance on the portal here, is that this wasn't like some scheme or some secret thing where, they have to go get these guys. They were very upfront from the start of this year about that was how they wanted to build teams here, especially after the Big 12 invite came in, that they felt that the best way to elevate the talent on the roster to get it to the point that it could compete in the Big 12 on day one was to go through the portal, because they didn't have time to develop guys for 4 years. And I can't overly attack that, because there are podcasts of me saying I agree with that strategy. The portal was brand new. We've learned in real time. So I'm not here to say they're idiots for trying this. I'm just here to say we're 4 years in, it hasn't worked. And we're seeing the ramifications across college football of the teams that went, it's another team in the state that decided to make their brand attacking the portal like crazy over high school. There's another one in the state. Do you know who it is?
Florida State.
It would be Florida State, who is in complete and utter free fall right now.
1-10, Florida State?
1-10.
2-9.
They beat the FCS team they played. Congrats, Florida State. Directly because of that, because they've had to restock their team every year. And yes, some years it works, and you go 13-0 like they did last year, and then go to bowl game against Georgia and get destroyed. And then when every single year you have to completely reload your roster, guess what happens? It doesn't always work, and the bottom can fall out. And I also think that there's and now I'm just kind of like philosophically talking about college football, I do think there's a cost to your culture when you build your team this way, because it's a more transactional. I mean, I think the sport's just more transactional than it used to be, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but there is definitely a more transactional relationship when you bring in a KJ Jefferson versus a quarterback you recruited for 2 years in high school and brought in and built up. And I think it makes it easier for when things go south for them to really go south, because you have a locker room full of players and starters and contributors who are not bought in on your program or the vision of your program beyond the transactional relationship of, I was not playing at my last place and I came here to play, or I was being paid less money at my last place I came in. And like I said, I'm not shaming NIL in any way, shape, or form. Go get your money. I would be doing it if I was a player. But I do think that when you don't at least have this sort of bedrock foundation of high school guys who bought in on UCF from high school and came in and have been in the program for multiple years, and it's more a revolving door, I think that makes it easier for things to spiral when there is adversity.
And that's why you see so many multiple time transfers. You see guys come in. We've seen guys come into UCF this past offseason, not really play much throughout the first few games, and then opt out and transfer again. Like that's kind of what's just happening in the sport. But it is, I think, a wider. When I went into this, was thinking like, what is Gus doing? And it's turned into like a wider, like it's less. Maybe it's part of it is development and all that stuff, but it's more so how they're choosing to build the team and the route they're taking that way. And it makes me kind of think, say he does, if he's still here next year and goes into this offseason, you have to hope and think and pray that they've realized this. I mean, it's not going to change in one offseason. They're not going to suddenly have a bunch of high school recruits that are going to play from day one next year. But you kind of hope that they do go into next year with the chance of, all right, we've got some young guys at certain positions. Maybe they're unproven, but we'll let them battle it out and get some playing time. And instead of saying, let's just grab this guy who's kind of okay, but he's played a lot of football, let's put him in over and that's why this is doomed to fail regardless. Because if you do that, you're going to lose a lot of games next year anyway, probably. Yes. And then what? Like at that point, okay, then you're just delaying your firing another year. It's just that's why he needs to leave. And
that what you just said there is why that's either not going to happen or not going to work, because I do agree it would be nice to see that. I'm not saying don't recruit the portal. You need to recruit the portal. You just need to do it more as a supplemental tool than this is how we build our roster. But say that Gus unfortunately comes back next year. You are in a situation where, maybe UCF can't afford to fire him right now. They can next year. The buyout keeps dropping. And if you're Gus, you can't pitch, well, let's start over and let's rebuild and let's play young guys and be bad again. Because if you're bad again, fan interest will be even worse than it is now, obviously. And boosters will be out, donors will be out, and UCF will have the money to fire you. So really your only choice if you come back is to do crazy job in the portal and try to bring in all this talent with less money than you had last year and hope it comes together this time. I mean, that's the only path forward. If
which you've been bad at doing, which
through 4 years you have yet to successfully do. So it's do we want to talk about, because I did, when we were looking at these stats and we were getting very critical of the portal, I did want us to double check with stats that the general vibe I get from college football that, teams that are doing well are not transfer heavy teams was correct. So we looked at a couple of the teams doing well in the Big 12, and well, would you look at that? It does appear that they're not transfer heavy.
Yeah. So just kind of making this more concise, we looked at Iowa State and BYU, and again for this year, looked at their top five highest graded players on offense and five on defense, minimum 100 snaps, and combining that all together, 8 of Iowa State's 10 are high school recruits. 6 of BYU's 10 are originally high school recruits, and for UCF that number is, I said 2, but I think it's actually 1.
I'm looking at it right now.
It's actually 1.
Yeah.
Because I wrongly had Matt Alexander. I just messed that up. So that's affected the podcast in a giant way.
So that is really 8 of Iowa State's top 10 players are high school guys. 6 of BYU's top 10 are high school guys. 1 of UCF's are.
And I want to say the one.
It would be Dylan Risk.
It's Dylan Risk.
The staff buried and did not want to play, and Gus actively screamed at because he threw a ball away. I've gotten more angry about that as the days have passed.
It's the photo.
It's the photo made it bad. Because in the moment I was like, yelled him. The photo's rough, and it's extra rough because we don't know exactly why he yelled at him. It looked like there might have been someone about to break open downfield, and Risk threw it away before he got open. We have seen John Rice Plumlee do some of the most dastardly things you can imagine happening. Like, insane things of like trucking a linebacker or staring down a DB and throwing the ball to his chest. And like Gus has been like, get him next time. And Dylan Risk throws the ball away, which is like what you want to see. They're like, as far as mistakes a quarterback can make, threw the ball away too early is not high on the list. As far
on the first drive of the game.
On the very first drive, and for Gus to be like, I got to let him know that this is not okay. It's just such a strange. And listen, full disclosure, we don't know. Maybe there was something else. Maybe I don't know. Maybe something went wrong on the play. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. I don't know. But either way, we've seen players at UCF, quarterbacks at UCF, and under the Gus regime do stupid as hell things on the field. And it's just kind of been okay. But
so on that, which, and this is purely speculation and kind of just feeding a point that you've made a lot, is them taking the ball first.
Which I hate.
Do. Yeah, you hate it. I almost wonder if Gus was like, because that throwaway meant they had to punt the ball away and they wasted their first possession. And, the whole goal of that is take the ball, go up 7-0, whatever, go up 3-0, get some points. And he was yelling at him through that lens. That's more of a reflection on him for doing that.
I know that there are different philosophies on this, and I know not everyone agrees with me, but screw you all because I'm correct. It enrages me when UCF wins the coin toss and takes the ball. And some people are like, oh, well, you don't want to risk, playing from behind, whatever. You are way overemphasizing the value of the first drive of the game. The situation I absolutely hate, a situation UCF put in at West Virginia has been a lot this year, is there is no worse situation in the world than when you are down at halftime and the other team gets the ball coming out of halftime. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to set up for yourself a situation where you know that when the second half starts, you get the ball up or down, you're getting that opportunity. I don't understand why a team would ever say we want. I mean, it drives me freaking crazy. I absolutely hate it.
And it's also funny. Like if UCF had, if it was the 2017 offense, 2018 offense, and they're getting the ball first, they're going to go up 7-0. Fine. I mean, do it every game. I don't care. You're going to go up 7-0. But with this offense, like it's hit or miss. You don't know. You could run into a situation where Dylan Risk, the fourth string quarterback, according to you, gets rid of the ball maybe on a play where you didn't want him to, and you're just going to scream at him. Like I don't know. We got far into this, but it's just it's almost like, oh, I don't trust my defense. Like, do you really trust the offense that much more than the defense? I don't know.
It is actually, you make a strong point that this is a season where they're literally onto the fourth quarterback that they are starting, and never was an injury involved. And they are like, this is an offense we trust to put us up immediately, and that will have no repercussions. Also,
but I'd have to go back and see. I don't think he takes the ball every time, does he?
No, it hasn't been consistent.
Yeah, so I want to know. I guess it probably is. Maybe it depends on the opponent and the opposing offense. I don't know, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like
dumb
it has
strategy.
Yeah,
but yeah, the bottom line is just listen. we talked about the portal stuff being bad. I think you see that more when you look at the teams that are succeeding in the Big 12 this year, and it's teams that built themselves up through high school. And I know BYU is a slightly different situation because they, have a little more limitations, whatever. But Iowa State's another prime example of the best teams supplement through the portal. They bring it. They're not ignoring the portal. They are bringing in portal guys to get better. But they have a base of high school talent that lifts them up. Their stars are largely high school players. They are not going all in on the portal and starting older rentals over young guys who need to develop. And that's what UCF has done for years now.
And this is a very, specific example. And again, you never know with the portal. He could leave and go somewhere else. But Iowa State's quarterback is a sophomore, and he started as a freshman. Yeah. And he's been he's not the best quarterback in the world, but he's been solid for them. It's been even last year when they didn't have a great year, he was in one of the bright spots. And this year he's been pretty good, and they've been much better. And he's a junior next year. So assuming he comes back, and it's not always going to work out where you get a true freshman quarterback who you can play for 4 years. But it's just another example where it's I almost what's the I don't know. I guess we can't really say what the most likely stuff that's going to happen this offseason until we know what's going on with the coaching situation. But
more than what's going on with the coaching situation, even whether Gus is the coach or not, we also need to know who's going to be here, because this does not feel like the type of season where UCF's going to have two portal entries, or two major portal entries.
And that's kind of what I was going to say is I almost probably think regardless, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it's going to be Dylan, maybe it's going to be EJ, but I almost feel like the starting quarterback for next season is not on the roster just because that's the way they've operated.
Well, it's just, and I don't mean to, because we got to do the rest of the podcast here, so we should probably stop at some point, but I could talk about this for the next 6 hours, it's you talk about high school recruiting and Gus and how skill talent hasn't panned out, and part of that too has been quarterback has been managed in weird, bad ways every year he's been the head coach. And literally it goes back to that first season in 2021. Dylan Gabriel gets hurt. Can't fault Gus for that. I guess you can a little because it was on a stupid play they shouldn't have done. But I'm not faulting Gus for that. You don't run that play and think my quarterback's collarbone is going to get sat on and he's going to be out for the rest of the year. So that's not his fault. What is his fault is when they go to Mikey Keene and say he's our guy, but also we got to get Joey Gatewood out there. It's incredibly important to the future of UCF that Joey Gatewood get many snaps. Never works. Then late in the season, they're like, dang, I guess we should try the fourth string guy. And Parker Navarro works in those situations. One thing that's been lost to time is the first Navy loss. Love that we have to specify which one we're talking about under this staff. That UCF was driving down the field with a chance to win the game. Mikey had hit a couple throws. Gus took him out for Gatewood. One of the plays. And Gatewood, the play got blown up. Mikey came back and the rhythm was gone. And they ended up, I don't remember if they punted, missed a field goal or what.
We were very upset about it at the time.
Very frustrating. All right, 2022, we have the great UCF fan civil war between John Rice Plumlee and Mikey Keene. Whatever side you're on, I think you can agree that was handled in a weird way. If you were on the John Rice Plumlee should have started side, that's fine. You were wrong, whatever. You can stay with that opinion. It's fine. You never forget that the actual team themselves, the actual players thought Mikey was going to start. And you could, even if you thought JRP should start, you can still knock Gus for the team being stunned. when John Rice Plumlee was announced as the starter. Then we go into 2023 and JRP is just the guy at that point, whatever. But you would think, right, JRP Simmons is the starter. There's no way that Gus could screw up something quarterback related this season. But don't worry. He has Tommy Castellanos, fresh off of 2022, where he managed to burn his red shirt for some reason in a season where he was the third string quarterback. And now he comes into 2023 and there's all this whatever. We still don't know fully the true story. Tommy goes from a press conference in the spring game saying, I'm a Knight and I'm happy to be here, to entering the portal 2 days later. And it's just been this. And now this year, it's been the whole, I don't even need to go into this year. You just lived ridiculous.
They started 4 quarterbacks.
I mean, literally every year there's been insane quarterback drama, largely unlike anything we saw at UCF ever before Gus got here. And it's been every single year.
And you and I had a conversation years ago that, and maybe it was even right after Dylan Gabriel entered the portal, but we've had the conversation about, I think I guess it was just more so McKenzie and then Darryl Mack and then Gabriel. It was like you had them start for, not even for Mack a couple of years, but you had them as your starter, whatever. And then it's an injury that is what ends their UCF career. And it's kind of crazy that they haven't had that problem in the last few years, but they've created their own problems. Yes. And that's just strange. I don't really know.
We do not talk enough about Tommy Castellanos burning a red shirt in a year where he was the third string quarterback. We simply do not talk about that enough. We really don't.
And I know what people are going to say to that is that it happened because Mikey ended up, wanting to keep his red shirt, but
which in itself happened because they started Mikey for four games, or played Mikey in 4 games. Yeah. I think he started 1.
I'm sure, and I don't remember it because it was 2 years ago, but you can go trace it back and figure out, hey, what game did Tommy play in that he just did not need to play in? And I'm sure there were probably 2 or 3 of those. So
yeah, they put him in at the end of Temple. They put him in at the end of the FCS game that year, which, like, again, it's all learning experiences because they had just introduced a new redshirt rule where players could play 4 games before their redshirt took effect. So what the staff did was, okay, well, now that we do that, we're going to play all of our young guys up to 4 games to get them as much experience as possible. Again, something that you can see making sense at the time, and I don't think I had a problem with. You just don't sense the repercussions of it. And what's frustrating is that college football has changed a lot in the last few years, and it feels like the staff has been on the wrong side of every change. It's always, oh, well, we didn't think about this. And like I said, I want to be clear, we didn't think about it either, but we're also not paid millions of dollars to think about it. So it's just, I don't know. It's like you want to see them at least win one of those and be like, yeah, we figured this might have been a repercussion of that, so we didn't do it. But it's always, no, they go all in. It doesn't work out.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
I don't know.
It's been uplifting.
Yeah, it's been great.
So anyway, UCF's playing a game on Friday.
Yeah, I literally, we could just do a little mini preview here, but I don't know what to say other than it's the last game of the season, and I am looking forward to being in Orlando and hanging out with you, and I guess being in the bounce house until the game starts. But more than anything, I'm just seeing RJ Harvey play one more time, seeing Kobe Hudson, Ricky Barber, some of those guys. Like, it is their last game for UCF, so it'll be good to see them one more time. And I think that's the thing is, like, I kind of listed off some of the seniors that we'll see presumably for the last time. It's been weird in the last several years where it's like you think this player's out of eligibility, but he might not be.
Yep.
Like, I don't always know, but like Brandon Adams.
We're very close to that being over because we're almost fully cycled. It was the COVID year that screwed everything up.
It should be next year, right? I think like this is the only year.
I believe the NCAA has also been cracking down on additional red shirts lately. There's also talk that they're going to move away from red shirts completely relatively soon, possibly. They're discussing that. And just have every player just gets a blanket 5 years, do whatever you want in those 5 years, play, don't play, but then you got to get out. So I feel like that might be coming eventually too.
But you could play for 5 years?
Yeah, it's literally, it's instead of it being like, well, this year was your red shirt, this year it's like it's like you're in college, congrats, you have a 5-year window to play. Play, don't play, whatever, and then you're done. So
that's a lot. That's a giant shift.
It is and it isn't, because it's like Dylan Gabriel's been playing for 14 years, and like that's just fine. So I feel like that's
Holt Naylor's played for his entire adulthood.
I feel like you'd pretty rarely see a player start 5 years if they change to that, because if you're good enough to start 5 years, you're not going to stay in college for 5 years. So I don't know. I just feel like it wouldn't happen.
I don't know though, because I mean, Gabriel as an example of that. I don't know.
But Dylan Gabriel's insane. Like, everyone thinks this is crazy. Like he is an interesting situation, and maybe you would see it occasionally with quarterbacks, because Dylan Gabriel's a very good college quarterback who probably isn't going to be awesome in the NFL. And he's done. Everyone hates him for transferring. I would do the same thing. Every offseason, he goes, who has the most money? And the team goes, we do. And he goes, great, and goes there. And if you know you're not going to the NFL, do that. Why not?
Yeah. No, he's made a lot of money playing college football.
Making more money this year than I'll make in my whole life. Good for him.
Yeah. Oh, that's sad to think about. I don't know. This is where we got now from the preview for Utah. I don't care. I don't know.
I am finding myself in the days leading up to this game growing unexpectedly emotional at the realization that at some point that night I'm going to watch RJ Harvey carry the ball for UCF for the last time. And that is making me very sad. I almost don't even care if they win the game or not, because this is the most lame duck game ever. Like, who cares? It's honestly like, I don't know what, like, obviously I'm joking to an extent. I want to see UCF win the game. And if they lose, man, am I going to be really angry? And we're going to have a post-game podcast where we yell about how they sent out Harvey with a loss and pitchforks should be sharpened and riots and all that. But I don't know. It's just a weird, this is really uncharted territory for me to be talking about a game where there are no stakes of any kind in any capacity, because literally the only time that this has been the case in modern program history was 2015. Where, they were winless, and it was like, that was kind of different because A, I didn't have a podcast back then, so I don't have to figure it out. And B, every game was stakeless from the start of the season. And by this point in time, by the time that USF game had rolled around, O'Leary was gone and the AD was gone. So there was all the hype of who's going to be next, like, or who are they going to hire? What's going to happen? And this year it's just like, please retire. Like, it's just, it's a not fun spot to be in. And it's a UCF football game. I love watching UCF play. I love covering the games. I'm excited to be there just because it's a game, but I don't know. I don't know if we talked about this a lot. I just felt like it wasn't super valuable to the listeners, and apologies if you disagreed, but to just go into like really hardcore matchups here and talk about what's going to happen and what might not happen, because it's just it's a game being played. And I think the storyline is the seniors. And why do I think that's the storyline? Because Gus Malzahn's press conference on Monday, which only went 7 minutes, which was a little weird, was he just kept saying over and over again to every question, this is about the Sooners.
Yeah, I mean, and it is, and this is it's not even like UCF's going in this game at 4-7. They can play spoiler for another team. It's also the fact that Utah is 4-7.
Yeah.
The only thing they can maybe spoil is that Kyle Whittingham's seemingly hinting at being done after this game and retiring. I mean, but at that point, it's like playing spoiler on a team's season is way more fun than playing spoiler on a team's coach's last game when you don't really have a history with that team.
I cannot overstate the lack of interest I have in, they handed Whittingham a loss. I like Kyle Whittingham. It was cool to see a coach stay with one program for 20 years when it wasn't a blue blood program and raise it from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 and the Big 12. Like, that's cool. I'm not like, send him out with a loss.
Yeah, that only works in rivalries.
It's like when you get to the holidays and you're just thinking about your exes. I'm like, I want USF. Like, I wish that they were playing USF in this game. I know that some of you are going to disagree with that. And I've seen a little bit of talk on it on Twitter, but
there's been a lot of arguments going on.
You know what would have given the Black Friday game meaning when UCF's 4-7 and there's nothing left to play for? If it was USF and you got to still try to beat your rival. And instead, it's just this. So that's cool.
On Fox at 8:00. It's the last game of Black Friday. It is the primetime game.
I have literally been cringing.
If this was the NFL, they'd flex it out.
They'd flex it out on Saturday. But this is college, and they decide these things months in advance. And I was cringing like I can't put into words when I was watching number 2 Ohio State versus number 5 Indiana on Fox, and like 19 times during the game, they're like, "Oh, we got an exciting one on Friday. Come Black Friday, we got UCF Utah on Fox." Like, they're running all because they have to. They need people to watch the game. It's actually embarrassing, and I'm just like, please God. I mean, that is going to be. I cannot wait to see how bad the TV number is for that game. I'm sure people have better things to do on Black Friday than watch two bad teams who are not going to a bowl face off in a game of coaches kind of dueling of who might retire, who might not retire. It's just, it's something.
You talking about them hyping up that game reminded me of something that keeps happening that no one else is going to care about, but I think you'll get a kick out of it. So I'm going to say it. It's so for the listeners, we have College Football Dynasty on PlayStation with some of our friends, 5 of us. And we're playing on Heisman. We're all playing as 1-star programs. I'm Kennesaw State. My team sucks. I went 0-12 my first season, 4-8 the second season. But it is in the middle of like a 2-7 season where my quarterback has thrown 4 touchdowns to 18 picks. And the game starts, and the commentary, because it's a video game, the commentary is like, "Oh, and this whole team revolves around this guy." And they show his stats, and he's got like 800 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 18 picks. That is them hyping up 4-7 Utah versus 4-7 UCF.
I know that there is no one on this podcast who cares about our dynasty with our friends, but Bailey lost a game to one of our other friends 7-3 last night.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
One of the best things I've ever watched in my entire life. I said when the game started, I said that I'm more excited for this than I have been for any UCF game in the second half of the season, and it did not. Yeah. Bailey did break his headset. And
I broke my headset. I yelled at Christian.
What I loved about that was I think I yell at you probably 12 times every day, and it's just like that's life. And you yelled at me, which is rare. I texted one of our other friends.
I think it's the first time I've ever yelled at you.
As soon as it happened, I texted our mutual friend Sarah, and I said, Bailey just yelled at me, and I don't think that's ever happened before. And then like 20 minutes went by, and you come back from going from Target because we're all in like a PlayStation party. You just go, "I'm sorry, I yelled at you, Christian."
Yeah, I felt really bad about it because I don't know. And that game frustrates me like nothing else. And I've said several times that I wish it hadn't been made, which there's only a little bit of truth in that, but I live like around the corner from a Target. So like you guys were still on and I was like, I'll go get a new headset real quick and then I'll be back. On that like short drive to Target and then just me like walking to the back of Target to get a new headset, like I kind of realized like how bad of a mood I was in. And I was like, all right, I need to like, this was a video game. And like, so I kind of like needed to cool down a little bit. And then when I came back, I was like, I yelled at Christian. I threw my headset and broke it. And everyone's like, I had to apologize for my actions.
2 quick things. One, anyone who's played this video game on Heisman knows that everyone who has played this game that we were so excited for and wanted for a decade, there is some truth to the I wish this game was not made because wow, is it freaking hard. And 2, I just so we don't come away from this thinking Bailey's the bad guy. I absolutely deserve to be yelled at in this situation. I was like being a backseat driver of a coach and just like yelling play ideas at him as he was trying to win the game.
So it was like a 4th and short, and I was like trying to make an adjustment, but I hit the wrong button, and you and like 3 other people in my ears are yelling at the same time. And then like getting exasperated with me when I didn't do what you wanted me to do because I couldn't make out the words that anyone was saying. So I was kind of yelling at like everyone, but I think you were the one who was like the most upset with me. So I yelled like directly at you.
But the important thing is that you'll come back stronger next year, unlike UCF football in 2025.
I hope so. I don't know. Is there anything? I didn't even do a score prediction for this because I don't. Whatever.
I think one of the teams will win.
You think
We'll
so?
have to see who. We'll have to see who.
Wow, that was the worst game preview ever. But does it matter? Like, is there anything else to say?
This is going to be the saddest game you've ever seen in your life. It's two teams that are on their 19th quarterback each. It's two teams.
That's the other element of it.
Huge expectations coming into the season. They both thought they were going to win the Big 12, and both of them are not going to a bowl. They both have coaches who are either publicly or privately flirting with retirement to some degree. This is the most. Josh Heupel used to say, "If you're juiceless, you're useless." And if that's true, this is the most useless game you've ever watched in your entire life. Because man, is there not going to be any juice. It's going to be a Black Friday football game. Woohoo. Can't wait to watch. I will be there.
One of the 12 games we get this year and the last one.
Yeah, and for all this, August. It doesn't matter. When UCF loses, I'm going to be enraged. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, that'll be great. Can't wait. Let's go to the football news. Kennesaw State transfer. Shout out Kennesaw State. It's my team. Kennesaw State transferred defensive tackle Puda Walker is scheduled for a visit to UCF this weekend. He's currently 247's number 2 defensive tackle in the portal. And then the other thing we mentioned at the top of the podcast, RJ Harvey, snubbed from the Doak Walker Awards finalist list. You said that was a tweet of the week thing, so should we get to that? Like, I'll wait. I'll still not talk about that until we get the tweet of the week.
That would be preferable.
All right, game of the week, real quick. UCF women's basketball. They're 6-0. They're at UNLV on Wednesday at 3:00. Trying to go to 7-0. I think they have 2 games out west this week. Caitlin Peterson is averaging 22 points per game. I think she just had I forgot how many she had the other day. She had dropped a lot in a blowout win on Sunday. Emily Rodriguez, the freshman, played a career high 31 minutes on Sunday and is averaging 13 and 5. It's been cool to watch them off to this start, and we'll see what they're made of come Big 12 time. But racking up these wins when they can is also very preferable. So that'll be cool. On a tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. Yeah. So tweet of the week has been through a couple evolutions, if we're being totally honest with you, over the course of these last few days, because tweet of the week was going to go to, there has been a lot of discourse on Twitter that I've been frustrated with. And the discourse has been RJ Harvey is either the best player in school history or at worst, the best running back in school history. And my issue with that is that neither of those statements are true, but this is not a healthy time to say that, because I think RJ Harvey is absolutely incredible, and by basically any stat you want to use, one of the top 5 players in program history. And I'm frustrated with the people who have said insane things and have forced me to kind of have to be a bad guy and be like, well, actually, and it's become a whole divide on Twitter. And I don't know, maybe I'm getting older because the young fans, they're starting to annoy me. But then I had to pivot from that because I was going to talk about that a little bit, and then RJ Harvey got snubbed from Doak Walker, and I was not going to get on here and be like, let's also talk about why he's not the best running back in school history, because we're not going to add insult to injury here. So why don't we just talk about that RJ Harvey, in a season where he's 4th in the nation in rushing yards, 4th in touchdowns, has an insane average. He's averaging 6.9 yards a carry, 1,458 yards on the season, 21 touchdowns on the season. And I have to be so crystal clear about the fact that he has been the reason this team is not going to be 2-10. I mean, I can't overstate. This is not a guy who just has a strong O-line and never gets touched and goes down the field. This is a guy that plays are broken or did not work or there's nothing there, and he dances around. He's patient. He's a good runner, and he finds a way to turn it into a touchdown or a big gain. And it's so infuriating that we're watching greatness right now. I want to be clear that not every year does UCF have some player who's one of the top 5 players in program history. We haven't seen it these last few years. It's been a while since we've had a player this great, but we're all just sort of watching their greatness. And it's so frustrating that the national recognition hasn't come for no good reason. There are guys ahead of him who just frankly should not be ahead of them. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't really know what the reason is. I don't know why Harvey has been so invisible. I don't know if it was a UCF should have promoted him more thing. I don't know if it's just this is where UCF's brand is thing. I don't know, but it's sad that he kind of got treated like just a G5 running back who's not worth talking about in what has just been an incredible season. And what makes me really sad, and this is how I'm going to rope it back into the fans who were like, he's the best player ever. And if you talk about, people are like trashing Kenzie Milton on Twitter and are like, this is what frustrates me, is that you're all going to do this to RJ Harvey in a few years. There will be a new generation of younger fans in 5 years who are going to say, you're going to bring up, there's going to be some UCF player doing something, and they're going to go, he's the best player ever. And you people right now are going to go, no, man, RJ Harvey was better. And they'll go look up the season and see 4-8 or 5-7 and go, he couldn't have been good They didn't even go. They weren't good. He wasn't even like a Doak Walker finalist, whatever. And you're going to sit there and be mad like I am now. And it's just, and I think that's what's so sad about the lack of recognition is like RJ Harvey just did this all in a vacuum. He came in, he had this amazing run at UCF. These last 2 years have been absurd. And there's just nothing going down in the record books to show it. It's outside of the UCF community. It's just like it didn't happen. And that is so sad to me.
I'm waiting on the end of the season. And if he's not first team all Big 12, I'll agree with you that there's nothing to show for it. But that's the last thing I can really kind of hold on to. And I do wonder, like, it's kind of interesting because I don't know what each individual voter kind of values, but I do think it's a statement on where the brand is. And I think it's a statement on a reflection of just this season. When you look at, and I made this point earlier on Twitter, it was like, you look at that Colorado game where all the eyes of the nation were on it. RJ had, I think it was 169 total yards. He had that long receiving touchdown, but the game was very not clearly going in UCF's way. And the story coming out of that game was Colorado and Travis Hunter and all of this. And every situation, well, I guess not even every situation, because no one watched it, but that TCU game was on Fox and he had an insane game in that one. But it's just, the UCF has been such an afterthought that, people are like, oh, he's having a nice season, but it hasn't made the same wavelengths as obviously with Boise State and Ashton Jeanty, who's the top running back in the country and all that. But I think, I don't know how much of it is looking at the team and looking at the record and then looking at the numbers and comparing. But the fact that he wasn't among the top 3 is insane to me. And I was upset about it. And I think he was upset about it. He tweeted, wow, earlier.
Yeah. His worst game of the season was at Florida, where he had 75 yards and a touchdown on 4.7 yards a carry and 35 receiving yards as well. So his worst game of the season was 110 all-purpose yards. And I do think it's a lot more of a UCF thing than a Harvey thing. I do think what you said is true, and this is just a little where things are at. You've seen that. UCF has been largely invisible this year. You've seen that in the TV ratings, whether they've played on their one game that got insane ratings was the Colorado game. And everyone got to watch them just get curb stomped in their own stadium. And I mean, seriously, guys, if you're not big into TV ratings, it's been shockingly bad for UCF this year, like blowing my mind bad how few people are watching their games, pretty much regardless of what network they're on. And that's the worst kind of situation to be in, because it means that, because they've played teams having big seasons and pulling good numbers like BYU and whoever. And what that signals is that when a casual football fan sees a game on TV, it can even be a team that is good, has a number next to their name that people care about, and they see the opponent as UCF, they go, and they don't click. Like, that's what that means. And that's a rough place to be in. And this is where it costs you. Situations like this, where you have a player doing incredible things and people nationally, just because, these aren't experts doing this. This isn't a scientific method. They're just looking around and seeing guys whose names they've seen as this is what you end up with. And that's really unfortunate. And that sucks, because that's something recruits notice too, to a degree. And that's tough when, I don't know what the pitch is, when you say UCF, come here, have all-time seasons, and no one will notice. That's not something that recruits really connect with usually.
Yeah, no, I mean, the brand is not strong right now. And
it's a bad spot. It's in a bad spot.
Wow, that's on that uplifting note. Yes. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. That is, that'll be great. And then Friday we'll all get together. Well, I don't know. We won't all get together at the bounce house because I don't know. A lot of you probably will not be there.
Excited to see the crowd.
I'm not at all. I'm excited to see the uniforms. But yeah, we'll talk to you guys on Friday night after the game. I'm sure it'll be, because even if they win, I mean, oh yeah, nice, they won, cool. RJ Harvey went out with a win. Like the post-game podcast, what do we meaningfully break down for 25 minutes?
They're going to win, and Gus is going to be like, I saw enough out there tonight to know I do have to come back and finish the job next year.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll be back on Friday night with episode 245 after the Utah game. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will talk to you on Friday.
Bye, everybody.